hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another episode of our newest series, Our Girls Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined by Mike Bonelli and Sherry Hudspeth. And remember, our goal with this show is to tackle the topics and discussions surrounding youth girls hockey to better the game for everybody. And if you're involved in youth hockey in any way, we're going to provide value and insight to create both a better environment and experience for everyone involved. For this episode, our topic is girls hockey versus boys hockey. Sounds like a Marvel film, but what's the difference? And our expert panelist is Kim McCullough, the director of Total Female Hockey. Kim played 6 seasons of pro hockey and was also the captain and leading scorer at Dartmouth College, graduating in 2002. She is a highly sought-after coach, a mother of 3, and we are fortunate to have her on today. Kim, welcome to Our Girls Play Hockey.
Thanks so much, Lee. And I've listened to all the episodes so far that you guys have done specifically on the girls. And I think it's awesome that you're going down this track. So thanks for having me.
Well, hey, listen, the honor's all ours. I mean, when we do shows like this in the Our Kids Play Hockey Network, one of the things we were really driven to do was find kind of the conversational gaps in the game. And when we spoke with Sherry, I think we realized that, hey, look, there's an opportunity here to do a show that's going to serve the girls' game, but really the broader game in its entire sense. And great guests such as yourself are really what make that drive. So thank you for being here again. It means a lot to us.
Well, my pleasure. I was on the ice for 32 hours in the last 4 days. So yeah, hopefully this voice holds up at the end of hockey camp season.
So luckily for you, everyone on this call could probably say that. And I'm serious, the amount of ice time I've logged this week. I feel fit, but I'm feeling pretty tired. All right, I'm not going to lie to you. So listen, with our topic today, I want everybody to know, if you heard our episode we did a few weeks ago when we discussed when it may or may not be the right time to move from boys hockey to a girls hockey program, this is kind of a companion to that, or part 2 of that in the way we formatted the question. So we're going to start really broad here, Kim. Let me ask you this off the top of the bat. What do you think is the biggest difference between girls and boys hockey?
Well, I think there's a few. I think the biggest one, and that certainly pops at young ages, is the social piece. There's something to be said of being around a whole bunch of other girls versus boys. And, I'm based out of Toronto, so there's no shortage of hockey options for everyone from boys to girls to co-ed. And, you can barely drive 10 minutes without running into another competitive center. So there's no question the opportunities are there. I would say the social piece is big, and I don't mean like the parties, although I'm sure the parties are different too. But just being with your peers and being able to have that personal connection in that way, I think is a really big driver. And sometimes one of the big reasons that people switch. Certainly at the young ages, I don't think there's any difference in terms of skill level or the things we should be teaching them. I run Total Female Hockey, but I would coach boys the exact same way. Right. The marketing's different with the ponytail on the hat, but other than that, it would be identical. So I don't think there's much that way. And then certainly you do get the difference when the checking comes in, the physicality. Now that said, I teach my players physicality from the time they're 6. So we are, definitely a tough team and could definitely hang in with a bunch of young boys. But we don't get to the checking piece, I guess now till the PWHL. I know you guys talked about that on a previous episode. But I would say other than that, the level of hockey craziness here in Toronto is comparable with the two. Unfortunately, we're not making Connor McDavid money anytime soon, so that's obviously a difference. Although I will say Poulin deserves that kind of money, and I would love to see her get paid that one day. But I would say one of the biggest things I hear from parents, if they start their girls and boys, and then they come to our camps, which are all girls, or they move to girls hockey, is just that their daughter's personality is different, and she kind of opens up a little bit when she comes to the girls' game. And that's different for everyone. Obviously, there's girls who love being around the boys and being in that environment and works well for them. But just in my experience, that's the feedback I get from parents who maybe have had experience in the boys' game and then bring their girls over to the girls' game.
Kim, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all you're doing for the women's game. It's very inspiring, and especially your camps that have all female coaches. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. But statistically, there's still a higher population of boys that play over girls. Can you talk about what challenges that creates and how do we get more women involved in coaching?
Oh, well, I'm trying my best, Sherry, to get as many of my former teammates and friends. I think one of the challenges with women in coaching is, sort of the off-ramp when kids come into play, if kids or relationships come into play. So certainly we see in Toronto a lot of women who want to get back after they've played college hockey or they played, at a competitive level and they want to get back involved with the game. Typically, they want to get back involved in the game at the top level, which can be challenging because they don't necessarily have coaching experience. But certainly, it's a bit of a cachet to have a pro player or a D1, D3, whatever it is, U Sports player come in and coach your U15 AA or U18 AA team. So that's typically where they get on the ramp, which is an interesting transition because they're not necessarily that experienced in the running of a hockey team, although they've come up from high level hockey, so their drills and their skills are quite good. And then, typically there's an off ramping either, hey, like I don't want to spend 24/7 all my weekends and evenings in a rink anymore, or I'm in a relationship and we're going to have kids. And so we get off the ramp and then do we get back on the ramp afterwards? I really believe, and I don't know, I must be a unicorn. I might be one of the few women who actually coached through having kids. I went into labor with my second kid on the bench during a game. So, but I didn't believe.
Whoa. You got to tell that story.
Whoa.
Oh, we can go into that if you want. Anyways, I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I
Please
think
do.
that's a big challenge. A hurdle. I don't want to call my children a hurdle, but some mornings they're a hurdle.
We all relate to that. Don't worry.
But let's tell that story.
Wait. I just want to say to the audience listening here, I've never experienced this. Mike's never experienced this. All right. This is something new. The game always surprises you. Just to recap here, I believe you said you went into labor on the bench with one of your children. Okay. I just wanted to set that up again for myself because you said that and I was like, did I hear that correctly? Kim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, this is a good one. So this is my second child. So those of you who are listening who have had children, this would have been very different if it was my first child. But this was my second child. So I knew very well the feelings you feel when you go into labor and that you don't need to panic and go to the hospital right away. Although, again, my 3 labors were quite easy. So this has got like disclaimers all over it. So we're in the provincials. This would have been when I was coaching U22 Elite. We're playing, I think it was in Nepean. I was coaching with Leaside. I've been coaching with Leaside forever. And it's like a banger of a game, like up and back, like a track meet. Goalies are playing great. Players are playing great. I think we're both like top 5 teams in the league at that point. It's a great, it's one of those games as a coach you almost never get where you just cross your arms and lean against the wall.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad to say. Like it's just
enjoying the game. Yeah.
So after the first period, I'm like, oh, it's not feeling great. Now at that point in your pregnancy, you're never feeling great, but definitely it was like something's going on here. But classic hockey player, I'm like, we're just gonna keep her going here. Had the flood between the second and the third, didn't say anything to anybody. It was okay. I was just leaning against the wall, And then so we end up, I don't even remember what the score of the game is now, because obviously I was preoccupied. But this would have been the first day of provincials. I go into the dressing room after, and I'm like, hey girls, like this, it's a great game, and here's what we need to do. And, classic coach debrief. And as I'm leaving the rink, my dad used to come and watch all the games I coached, which is awesome. And then my husband was there. And we're walking at the door. I'm like saying bye to everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye. Like, good day. See you. And then like we get right out the door and I'm like, we need to go to the hospital. It's probably happening now. So, and they're like, no react. They're like, okay, like,
wow,
classic me. So, and anyways, we went to the hospital and a couple hours later, I text my assistant coaches and I'm like, hey, you guys are in charge tomorrow. And they're like, you're crazy. I'm like, I know. And my daughter was born the next day and I missed the games and I got updates from everybody. But that's as Kim a story as you're going to get because that tracks 100%
That's not a Kim story. That's a hockey story. That
That's
is
a hockey
something,
story.
with your permission, we're definitely going to share that one, because that's one I've never heard before. Now remember, you said this was your second kid,
That was my second, yeah.
and your second plays or
Oh, she
doesn't play.
plays and she
She plays.
skates like the wind.
All right.
Yeah,
When
she
she makes the PWHL, we're going to share this clip again, because this is the real origin story of how that happened.
Yeah, she was born for it. And every year, like her birthday lands around provincials, right? Which is
Right.
great when you're a young hockey player. And yeah, then the third one, I had her actually in between playoff series so that I could get back. I was on the bench when she was 2 days old.
Yeah, you timed that one.
Yeah, that one was like, well, we tried to time that one as
We
much as
tried to
we
time
could, these
that
sort of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the difference between girls hockey and boys hockey, we've just discovered it. Women are willing to go into labor on the bench, and no man in the history of hockey has ever done that. Just making you guys, I'm in awe. That's amazing. All right, listen, we got to get back on track. But you said that. I said, whoa. We gotta hear this story. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Good one.
Yeah, I slammed my finger in the door once, and I had to go to the hospital after a game. And
But he stuck it out.
I'll tell my story. I did stay the whole game, and I coached. So
Wow.
Thinking about that perspective, right? And I think you talk about it, and I get the pleasure of listening to Kim a lot with Wally Kozak and some stuff with the Sharks, and she does such a great job of like describing the game and skill development, not from a woman's perspective, but just from a hockey player's perspective. But I always love to hear, the nuances of how you treat your players. But maybe tell us a little bit about from girls to boys. And you've been on both sides of the game and around the game, and you're in the mecca of hockey there, where you see the boys and the girls and the parents. What do you think the perspective is and the expectations of boys and girls parents? Does it depend on level? Does it depend on their skill? Does it depend on what team they're on? Just a little bit about where you see that from your view of the parents and what they expect from their daughters.
For sure. I think there is, now that I've got young daughters in the game, so my daughters are 8 and 6, I'm around the rinks a lot more around younger parents. Like they're kind of like little puppies, like super excited. For many years, I coached U22, I coached college, I coached U18. So they're at the end of the journey. They're a little less energetic about the whole thing, kind of very well tested. And so I would say generally, the boys hockey parents get crazier earlier than the girls hockey parents. There's a little crazy in all of us, myself included. But I would say like they go all in a little bit more quickly than the girls do. I think, our hockey starts at the same time. So we have the Learn to Play program starting at 3, 4, 5, the same way the boys do. I do think here they've got, these rogue AAA leagues that start when they're 5 and 6, and they go full ice right out of the gate, some of them. And there just seems to be this urgency, to be the next Connor McDavid or Connor Bedard or whoever the next Connor will be. And so there's a lot of FOMO. And I do see that creeping into the girls' game a lot more. Certainly, I would never have dreamed 10 years ago that I would have 7 and 8-year-old players' parents asking me about spring hockey, and whether they should do it or not do it with the girls. And I'm sure those conversations happen even younger with the boys, but that's not something that was a reality in our game that many years ago. And now people feel like, if I'm not doing all this and this and this, am I going to be missing out? And, as someone who makes a living coaching hockey and running camps and clinics, certainly it's good for business if you want to get on that bus. But I really believe that with the girls, the end game still is the college hockey experience. Certainly they all want to make the Olympic team. We know that is virtually impossible. Not to say it's not a dream to have, but to be in the top 20, certainly here in Canada, the chances are extremely low. And even if you look at the PWHL, there's 6 teams. Hopefully by the time these girls get older, there'll be some more, but still the chances are extremely low. Whereas the chance of making a college hockey roster as D1, D3, U Sports, club hockey. I mean, there's a ton of opportunity. And so that urgency means you got to finish high school first. There's no exceptional player status. You know, you're not getting drafted into the dub or the O or what, like, there's a pretty normal path for the girls that you can't really accelerate through. And I think that normalizes the parents a little bit. But like I said, there's still a lot of crazy. And again, being in Toronto, we're just as crazy as the rest of them.
Yeah, Kim, it's funny because statistically speaking, boys hockey versus, I guess, girls hockey going to college, girl hockey players statistically have a massively higher chance of actually playing in college should they want to do that than boys. Now, it's funny because that number's dropping because the player population is growing, which is a good thing. But yeah, those dreams at the young age are interesting to me. And I always wanted to say, like we say this almost on every episode now, to the audience listening, you're not crazy. The hockey world is crazy, right? If you're listening to this show, you probably have a grip on something. But yeah, we Mike and I discuss this all the time on Our Kids Play Hockey, just the FOMO and the kind of, I call them the rookie hockey parent that's just trying to find their grip. It's like, hey, relax. You've got some time. You're cultivating a love of the game here. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, because I just, and you're right. I mean, the FOMO there is for the boys and girls, and I'm just seeing it more and more. It is getting a little, maybe because of the PWHL and the fact that you could, potentially play pro hockey, depending on what parent put their kids into a sport and why they do it.
Right.
But can you talk a little bit about, because this is my perspective, right? I don't see the cutthroat part of it as much. Like, I don't see, like, on the boys' side, it's everything's secretive. That person's going to that skating coach. That person's doing it. I mean, I just worked with 9 prep girls this last week, just getting ready for school. And I just found, like, their ability on the ice together and the parents all sitting together, and they're all kind of in a common, like, man, we want best for our daughters to have a really great experience first, and the other stuff will kind of take care of itself. And the like, do you find that, in an all-female program, do you find that maybe that, I don't even know that's not compassion, but the ability, like the want of other players to succeed longer is there more than maybe in the male side of the sport?
Yeah, I mean, most of my experience on the female side, and I'm actually the director of coach and player development at the Toronto Leaside Wildcats. We're the biggest girls hockey association in the world. And actually, if we were a country, we would be the 10th biggest country in women's hockey. Yeah. So that's a fun fact. And so, I mean, Sherry grew up not far from where I live now in the Toronto universe. So I think there is some of that cutthroatedness at the top level, in the sense that it's very easy to move around and find the next great team. Like I said, if you live where I live, you're 25 minutes away from 6 centers that all have top level. And so at the tippy top, there's that, like, urgency to be with the best. But that's a very small percentage of the population. For the majority of the population that we work with at Leaside or all these organizations, I think you're right, Mike. The experience is a huge piece of it. And that's a big part of what we sell, is that, you see a path. If you want to get to U22 Elite or you want to get a scholarship, we have that path. And it's mapped out for you. But if hockey's not your be all and end all, or you want to play at a high level, but you're also a soccer player, or you want to play at a high level, but U18 is going to be your last year of hockey, we offer that too, right? So that's, the joy we have in the numbers. We have 1,600 players. We have every, iteration of hockey and level that you could possibly want. And I think that gives families a lot of comfort, because you don't know. My little 8-year-old who says she loves hockey and I want to do hockey, if she wants to play college hockey or in the PW, that's 10, 15 years from now.
Right.
I don't know what she's going to like 3 months from now, right? But I know she loves hockey, and maybe she 5 years from now is playing at a lower level because she loves it, but rock climbing has taken over it, right? So I think that experiential piece is really big in the girls, knowing that they tend to play more sports for longer than the boys do.
Right.
The academics are a really big piece, because they're looking to get scholarships, and they know that, again, the McDavid money isn't coming anytime soon, so they have to get a, quote, real person job. That's what my mom calls it, real
Real
person job.
person job.
I don't have a real person job, just so you know.
Yeah.
That's the defining line.
You have a hockey person job.
I'm a hockey person job, but yeah, I think the experience is huge. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the social piece. Now, that experience could still be like, we want to win it all and we're going to be the top team in the province. For sure, that's there as well. But there are very few win at all cost programs or teams that last longer than one season, because of course, when you have the win at all costs, let's get everyone together, and somebody's got to be the first line center, and someone's got to be starting goalie, and someone's got to be the top D pair, and they're not, that team blows up the following year, and they all go to the other teams that are 25 minutes away. So it's not a sustainable effort, at least not in the Toronto area.
Kim, could you talk about some of the differences between that you've seen between female coaches and male coaches?
Besides giving birth.
Yeah, other than
I haven't seen that from the guys yet.
Yeah,
I have seen some crazy instances on the ice. You can imagine coaching 7 and 8 year olds. Like, you're always worried you're going to get submarined by a kid who thinks they can stop, who can't actually stop. Yeah, I would say, first of all, I'm a big believer that, we want great coaches. And if some of them happen to be male and some of them have to be female and some of them identify, doesn't matter to me. I know at our organization, we're almost 1/3 female coaches on the competitive side, which is like extremely high compared to a lot of other organizations. So we're proud of that. But at the same time, I've coached with and against a lot of terrific male coaches that I'd be sad if they weren't in the female game. So I would say, obviously, you can only have been female if you're female. So, that is a big piece. I know a lot of the women we have coaching have played at a high level, but many of them have not. And this is something, maybe Sherry can relate to as well. When I first got into coaching, I remember I co-coached with this woman she was at the end of her coaching career with her daughter. So she had coached her from novice to U18 AA all the way through. And I came on as this new co-head coach with her, fresh out of playing pro, just started my business. And we're kind of talking about responsibilities. And she's like, okay, Kim, here's how it's going to go. You're going to do all the hockey stuff. You want to change the power play. You want to run the practices. You want to do this. That's you. I'm like, great. She's like, I'm going to do all the other stuff. And in my head, I'm like, what's the other stuff? There's other stuff? I didn't know there's other stuff. So that year was my best coaching year because I just, I was like, oh, we're going to do this drill and we're going to do that drill. And she did the stuff, which I didn't have to do any of. And then I realized the following year when I got my whole own team, what that stuff was. And just so everyone's clear on the stuff, right? The scheduling, the player management, the parent management, the skills that coming out of pro at whatever age I was, 27, I hadn't really had a real person job. I didn't know how to deal with the dad who's the partner at the law firm who wants his daughter to miss the practice, and he's going to sneakily worm his way in there to ask me, and I'm going to be nice and say yes, and then all of them are going to miss practice, and I've created my own monster. And I think that's a bit of a challenge sometimes with our younger female coaches, is that they don't necessarily have as much real world job experience, life experience. But they have all the hockey piece. And then you've got the women who maybe never played at a high level in hockey. Maybe they played another sport, who want to give back to the game. And they're always nervous. Like, Kim, I don't know if I can do it. And I said, listen, you've got the people skills. You've worked, you know how to deal with the parents. You've been a parent. I love teachers as coaches, of course, that's a no-brainer. But I think there's a place, for all these different pieces, the women who've played at a high level, the women who are just want to give back to the game. And then, the males who have, similar experiences. They might have played at a high level. They might not have. I think there's a little bit for everyone. I just know with my daughters, first of all, they don't want me as their coach. They keep asking when they get a new coach, which is hilarious because that's not happening anytime soon. But they certainly do react differently to the female coaches than they do from the male coaches. And we have some fantastic male coaches, but there's just a different connectivity. And so I always encourage people, I'm not saying you have to have a head coach who's female. You don't even necessarily need to have an assistant coach that's female, although that's like a hot market for sure. But to have a female on your bench when you're coaching on the women's side of the game is absolutely critical, to have that someone there who can connect with the players in that way. I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So I know it's hard to get the all-female bench. It's hard to find the head coaches who are willing to put in that much time and effort, but an assistant trainer, somebody, even just a skills coach who's there once a week, I think could make a really big difference on a girls' team's bench.
Do you think there's do you think that's I mean, from the business perspective, you know, because I think our audience is a lot of different type of people. And I think a lot of it is people that are coaching and just getting into coaching. And what I find is, I don't know if the female coaching side thinks that there's a longer lifespan to get into coaching. I see figure skaters that turn into hockey coaches. I see, you know, a couple of like very niche skills coaches that work with a couple of kids, but they don't coach. They just coach players. They're females, but they coach male professional players in skating and edge control and things like that. Maybe they can't, I don't know, maybe they don't feel comfortable teaching shooting or something like that to an NHL player because it's different mechanics or like the strength part. But do you think there's do you think that's like, what comes first, like the chicken and the egg there? Do we need more female coaches to understand there's a business side? Like, I see every male coach that gets out of the AHL says, I could just be a hockey director, and I could go be for the rest of my life run hockey programs, and I don't see that in the women's game. I mean, I see it a little bit, and it's changing obviously. But where do you think that lifespan is? Like, what do we need to do as a sport to convince more women that retire from playing to say, no, you don't have to just give private lessons and be like in a niche environment. You can actually be in a total female hockey type of environment and really encourage more women to come around. You kind of like what Sherry's doing with her programming too. I mean, does it take leaders like yourselves to just say, listen, we're going to put a stake in the ground here and make this happen? I'd like to hear from both of you guys, actually, Kim and Sherry.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think, you know, what Sherry's doing is awesome. Yeah, like, well, I think it's important people know you can make a living in the female game. And that's not to say anything about, you know, people who are working on the men's side of the game. I think, you know, all these opportunities we see, you know, women who are becoming assistant coaches at that level and hopefully head coaches one day. I think that's amazing. I will say I do have a soft spot for female hockey, and I'm in Toronto, so it's very easy for me to stick in this niche in the city that I'm in. It would be very different if I was in small town somewhere else to myopically work with the girls. But I do think we have to hold ourselves up as role models. And I'm very proud of the fact I'm a mother of 3 and I went into labor with my kid on the bench. I'm proud of the fact that I started this business from nothing. I've been doing it for 17 years, and this is all I do. All I do is coach girls hockey. I mean, it's amazing, but you know, and I played at a decent level. I was a good hockey player, but you know, I'm really more proud of the fact that I'm a role model for having a business, doing what I love in the sport that I love. It's very sustainable. And I think it's really important for us as women to champion women who are involved in the game, male's game, female game, you know, the Paralympic game, like anyone who's involved. I think there needs to be a light shined on us. And whether you're, you know, I have a former player of mine who is a videographer. You know, she does all the videos and team photos and all this. And she just called me last week to say like PWHL is going to bring her in as like a video person. Like, she's making her living taking pictures and videos of hockey. Like, that's her full-time gig. She's female. I think that's really, really important for people to see that it can be a side hustle. It can be a very lucrative side hustle. Doing it as a full-time job is obviously a lot. And I think that the people who sometimes get into it, Mike, to your point, you know, they recognize that, hey, if I just do a couple skills clinics here and there, you know, I get paid by eTransfer or Venmo. That's easy. To take it to the point where you actually are making a full-time business out of it as an entrepreneur is a massive leap. And that not everyone's built to be an entrepreneur, but then there are so many more options now for women in the game of hockey that you could not have ever coached. You could have not ever played hockey, and you could be very, very, very involved in this awesome sport on either the male or female side. So I think it's championing the women who are doing it and getting us out there and saying, hey, Sally, you could do that. And you don't have to be the best skater in order to do that if you want to be the voice of the PWHL Toronto and be the announcer, right? Like that's a job possibility now that, wasn't there, a year ago. Although I do joke, like when they say, oh, professional women's hockey has arrived, I said, yeah, well, we were doing it pretty well 20 years ago too, but there weren't many zeros behind the paycheck. But we'll get there eventually, hopefully. But I think
20
there's lots of paths forward for women in the game.
Speaking of 20 years ago, when we played against Leaside was one of the first programs that I ever saw that had female coaches. They had 2 female coaches at that time, and that time it was only men in the league, and I've only seen men coaching. And when I saw that, it's like, oh, we can coach, like it just kind of, it's not really something that's really apparent, but it did plant the seed. And I always remember seeing them on the bench, and then later got back into coaching. But I think visibility is so important. Like just seeing women behind the bench, like there's women that drive the Zamboni, you can do broadcasting, you can do youth hockey. There's all kinds of roles. And I speak a lot about women working in hockey, that there is so many jobs for you now. And with the NHLCA, Lindsay Penow, she's creating a lot of opportunities for a lot of women around the game. And it's like, if these kids, they finish NCAA college hockey and they get on as an assistant coach and want to give back to the game, it's like, I think we just need women wanting to come back into the game. And like Kim said, like, you don't need to be scared. It's like, get in, be an assistant coach. Someone can mentor you or follow someone in your home rink or your hometown, and just get back involved in the game and get back to the game. But I think the visibility of having women on the ice for parents to see, women coaching their daughters, I think is so important and impactful.
Yeah. And if you're a hockey director like Kim is and Sherry, and you're running hockey programs, provide the support structure, men and female. I've seen more men and female coaches not succeed because of what Kim said earlier. Like, oh, I just thought I was coming here to coach. Like, I didn't know how to do all this other stuff. Like, this is like 27 weeks of my life. And
it's a full-time job.
I've never used Sport Engine, and I've never used, I've never had to do a calendar app and figure out what girls are playing soccer and lacrosse, and have to actually go to school sometimes. Like, you can't leave on a Wednesday and go to a tournament. Like, so I think that, if you want more female coaches in your organization, or good male coaches, find a way to support them and give them the ramp to get to a point where they can kind of take over and be entrepreneurial, instead of like, oh, by the way, hey, see you later. Or maybe you'll see if you'll make it to the banquet. Good luck.
But it behooves you to educate. Like, that's one of the things I see in organizations too, Mike, is like, oh, you'll figure it out. Like, no. Do it. A couple hours of education. You just solve a million problems. That's one thing. A couple of things I want to add to this is, for the broad audience here, it can be easy to forget, like, look, as a white male, there's no shortage of white males in hockey, right? And I've been seeing that since I got into hockey as a young kid. It's easy to forget different ethnicities, women in the game. Until you see it, you might not realize it's possible. And if you were a young girl 30 years ago, you weren't seeing it. Now, if you're a young girl today, like my daughter, who's 8 years old, professional hockey, and Kim, not to take away what you said, for sure, it's very visible at the moment, more visible than ever. I'll say it like that. That's a very real possibility in her mind now, because she can see it. All right. That's just something important to keep in mind. A follow-up question I wanted to ask you that I think pertains to this is, and this is for everybody here, both Kim and Sherry, and Mike too. Mike, you've coached professional women's hockey. How can men be an ally and support this, right? Because again, we're talking about women jumping in the game. The future of the game is men and women working together to make it a better game, right? So how can men be an ally in this situation, whether they're coaches, parents, players, anything in between that?
Well, in my experience, like the dads are great allies, right? Because their daughter's playing hockey and they are all in. right? So they are our greatest supporters. And I've been to, I'd say at least half a dozen, if not more, PWHL games. And there's a lot of screaming 8-year-olds, no question about that.
Right.
But there's a whole lot of dads with those screaming 8-year-olds who are championing our sport as well. So I think it's, again, it goes back to that visibility and people understanding that, quite frankly, it's a different game. It is not what you're going to see when you watch the Leafs versus watching PWHL Toronto. It's a
Right.
different sport in a lot of ways. And so it'd be like volleyball versus beach volleyball. Like they're volleyball, but they're a little different than each other. And I think that's okay. I think for a long time with women's hockey, we've been like very much stuck comparing ourselves directly to the men's game. And I don't think we need to do that. I think
That's a
it's a
great point.
very, very, very different entity. And I'm excited when I see, the marketing attempts and the growth of the women's game now to sort of sell it as like it's not the NHL's little sister. I really hope it's an entity in and of itself and that people can get behind it as a unique sport in which it is.
Right.
So I think not that we don't want to be tied to the men's game. Obviously, there's a lot of great parallels there, but I think to celebrate it for what it is and not put it down for the things that it's not, I think is a really, really important piece. And a lot of the men will have seen both, right? If they played hockey themselves, they would have been on the men's side, and now they're on the women's side, and they see that it's just, and when I mean differently, I just don't mean as girls on the ice. Like the strategical pieces of the game can be played very differently. The ways you
Right.
can have success in the female game are very different than the way you can on the men's game. There's ways to teach it that because we don't have full body checking, there's certain skills that work way better in the women's game than they do in the guys' game. And I think you have to watch a lot of women's hockey to get the nuance of that. But when you start to understand that, you do start to see how it is a different sport. And I can nerd out about that piece
Oh,
all day.
we're going
But I
to in a
think,
few minutes now that you
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah. But I think that it is, you're not going there expecting, the Scott Stevens, Eric Lindros, blue line like it's just
Yeah,
not.
we don't need to talk about that. That ruined my youth. That was the last day of my youth when that happened.
I
So
was
we
very
can.
sad. I was a big Lindros fan too.
Me too.
But yeah, so I think it's just understanding that it's different and it's great that it's different and celebrate that it's different.
Right.
And like I said, I think the PWHL is doing a great job of that. And I think, the Canada-US rivalry has always done a great job of that. They are their own in their own league,
Right.
their own
brand, yeah.
level. And you watch that and you're like, what sport is this? Because that's exciting hockey. No
Right.
question about that.
Well, and then, again, Sherry and Mike, anything to add to that? Just about how men can be an ally, because I think it's an important question to discuss.
Got Jerry.
Oh no, just yeah, having the support of dads and having the support of men is just very important. And yeah, I love to see it. I love to see like when you go to games and there's little boys and dads taking their little boys. Like the more that we can expose our game to everyone, I think it's just gonna help grow. So yep.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, it's getting those dads that are like played pro or they played college and they're intense, like they're, and then say, listen, you have to bring that same intensity. The one thing I learned, listen, I coached with Colton Orr. I mean, on a female bench, and he didn't coach like he coached. Like there was no like, oh, be careful the corner. Like it was like, okay, you're going to coach, but and I've learned so much from Kim listening to her in other things. In just the way she teaches and how the nuances of the game and how it's changed. But sometimes I think as a male coach and a dad, you have to understand that the game is different. Your daughters, the objective for where they want to be, if they want to play prep and college, it is a different game. And sometimes you have to be willing to let that game happen instead of trying to have them play a game at 8 and 9 and 10 that's just not going to be there for them. Like
Right.
the focus on what they're trying to learn and how they could be successful, really to Kim's point sometimes is, well, there's other ways to look at that. If you're a dad, then you played hockey, you don't even understand that because you've never been in the female game. So I think that's where, getting more female coaches that played at a high level, that understand body position, that understand how important the stick is, to understand that you're not taking rips from the top of the blue line, and your shot selection has to be different. all that kind of stuff comes into play. And you don't know any of that if you were just a guy who played college hockey and now your daughter's playing.
Yeah, Kim, let me throw it back to you here for a minute because I think this will be a really interesting discussion too. We'll get back to the questioning in a minute, but we are talking about the differences between boys and girls hockey a little bit. Talk to me about some of those skill sets, those tactics. I think that would be a really interesting conversation. Sherry, feel free to jump in as well because, Mike, I think you're making a good point. I think a lot of people just go with, well, hockey is the same thing across the board, and that's not true, right? It is a different sport, like you said. I think that we benefit from looking at it like that. Extremely similar. I think that's a fair thing to say. But what are the skill sets and the tactics that differ?
How much time have you got?
We got about 2 more hours. No, yeah. Go
Great.
ahead.
So let's go. So a lot of this has to do with personality and the female tendency to want to play a certain way within a group game. So I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, right? They are coach pleasers. They want to do it right. I think you put something on the board, stand here, do this, and they will stand here and do that,
Right.
even if the puck is 8 feet somewhere else where they should probably go get it. That is a wonderful thing when coaching the girls, right? I love coaching all girls because they sit there and listen, rapt attention. They're not shooting pucks against the boards when I blow
Punching
the
each
whistle.
other. Yeah.
They're paying attention to every word I say.
Hey.
The problem with that is it sucks some of the creativity out of the game if as a coach, you go, okay, I can exploit this. I can exploit the girls' ability to do exactly what I say because they will go exactly where I point in the forecheck and they will stand exactly where I want on the breakout. And that can bring success at the young age groups if you have structure and players who are willing to do it because a lot of the other teams you play against might not have the same skill set as you. So if you decide you're going to forecheck with 3 and U11 hockey, I haven't met a lot of U11Ds who can solve that problem, right? So that's going to bring you success, relying on the girls' ability to do exactly what you say. They think everything in hockey is always and never. So on this drill, guys, you're going to take the puck down the wall and turn. Do I always do that? I'm always going to do that? You're like, no. It's just a tool for your toolbox. But that's the way the girls think in general. I'm generalizing here. But I would say the vast majority of them think that way. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do, so I coached the top levels for a really long time, and now I'm at the grassroots. And so my entire job now is like, how do we break that, right? That's always going to be there. They're always going to want to do what I say. How can I teach them to be creative by doing what I say? So in the development of young girls, these are the 2 big ones, and I think they go well with their personalities. The first is I always tell them to skate to daylight. Channel your inner Bobby Orr. They don't know who Bobby Orr is. Channel your puck hog tendency. Why would I do that? Because the girls will throw the puck away all day long. They don't want to make a mistake, or someone told them they have to pass, or they're worried Sherry won't be my friend if I don't pass it to her. I'm generalizing, but this is a truism from 8-year-olds all the way to 28-year-olds. Sherry is nodding. This is true. And so I teach them to skate to daylight, get that puck, find where the space is, figure it out, keep going, right? That's the number one skill I teach young players. They have to be able to solve their problem on their own. And you might say, Kim, you're going to have a whole bunch of puck hogs. Well, no, I'm going to teach them how to pass soon. That's going to happen. But with the girls, they need to have the confidence. That's the biggest word in girls hockey. They have to have the confidence to be able to solve the problem on their own. And often, this is a kind of a throwback to an earlier question. When they're with the boys, their tendency to do that is much, much lower. They will not hang on to the puck and try to go end to end. They will give it off for whatever reason that, millions of years ago was stuck in our male female. I don't know why they do it, but they won't do it. With the girls, they'll do it. So skating to daylight and keeping the puck, I think is a really, really critical one at the youngest age groups to give them confidence. The other one is the word I yell the most, which is hunting. We talk about hunting. This is physicality, right? The girls are too nice. They don't want to run anybody over. Well, not my kid. My kid wants to run everything over, including the net. Everything is going to fall. It's like bowling. But that idea to hunt, right? Angling, stick on puck, all the things we want to teach. When you use the word hunt with the girls, it's like a button goes off in their head and they understand like, oh, I'm going in hard. we hunt with 2 at U8 and U9. We send 2 into every single battle because we want the first one to go in and get the puck. We want the second one, or the first one to go and get the body and the stick, and the second one to get the puck. And we're solving that problem at the youngest age groups. And I know Sherry's, coaching a lot of girls in hockey, right? We don't want it to be a no touching sport. And that, I think, sometimes is what they think it is. It's not all skills and floating around with the puck. You've got to be able to hunt, right? And then that confidence they get from that physicality on the, I guess, defensive side of the puck is the secret weapon on the offensive side of the puck. So you don't need a toe drag or a Michigan or any of those moves to succeed in girls hockey because there's no body checking. If you understand how to protect the puck and build a wall and you can drive the net, you can be the next Natalie Spooner, guys. Why did she have 20 goals in the PWHL? Because she is the best player in the world at protecting the puck and moving her feet and getting to the net. I love Natalie. I coached her a long time ago. She does not have the best stick skills in the world. She is by no means the most skilled hockey player in the universe. But that is the hack in girls hockey. Your ability to use your physicality on offense to drive the play is the most important skill, in my opinion, whether you're a D or you're a forward. Once you unlock that level of confidence to do it, that's what really changes the game. And that's when you watch Canada and US and it looks like it's full body checking, right? That's really what they're able to do. They know physicality on offense and they know physicality on defense. And I think that's really the secret sauce. Once you can teach players that ability of puck protection and to get pucks into the middle. I always joke in girls hockey, they might as well not have a middle of the ice. It's just a track. Everyone just skates around the outside because no one wants to touch anybody. We could just get rid of the middle part. And that's what I'm trying to do, is get them into the middle of the ice. I told you I talked for a long time, guys.
No, but I think that, that's my argument sometimes to youth parents with young girls is you hit it, like, I don't know, you might have said it 15 times in that way too long explanation about women's hockey. But it's the confidence piece. It's like, I used to argue all the, we got to play an upper level. We got to play the best to be the best. Like, you can't be the best if you never touch the puck. If you don't get the opportunity to even try a toe drag, how would you know? Like, so I think that's like our inclination as parents, with young girls or boys, anybody, right, is to put them into a place of struggle instead of finding the confidence first and then learn how to struggle through that. And I think that's where we lose a lot of really great players, because they all of a sudden they go, oh my God, like I can't do this anymore. So is the argument like, and that, and Sherry, we've had this, how many times have we had this on our podcast about, when are, not to take Lee's question, I guess, but when is that transition?
Go for it. You can take it.
From like, I'm a parent of a girl. I want her to be Natalie Spooner. So I got to put her in the AAA boys because she's a better skater. Now she can't do it physically. It's hard for her to get to the puck. She's getting, knocked around a little bit. She's so when is that change? It is in reality, is it just, you got to look at your daughter and say, she can handle it or she can't? Like, where is it that confidence? How long do we end that? Like, what's more important, confidence and the ability to think you can do it, or fighting to get there?
Well, I think, just so we can fact check this, pretty sure Spooner played girls hockey the whole way through, but we might need to look that up. But, but I think I have a lot of thoughts on this. I would say the on-ramp in girls hockey, if you want a scholarship in Canada, I know your ages are a little different. So for you guys, it would be U16. For us, it would be U15 AA. That's the level you need to get to. However you get there, what weird journey you get there, that's when the college scouts are really starting to come out. So grade, 8, 9, that's when it's really starting now in girls hockey. So I hesitate to say it doesn't matter, but I actually don't think it matters. I was playing house league at 13. So somehow I figured it out. Okay. So I don't think you need to be like the best of the best up until that point, but I do think you need to be in the top tier at that age group if that's the level that you want to get to. So how do you get there in a way that is going to bring you success based on the position you play? Here's what I see. And again, this is in Toronto and Ontario. Most of the girls who are playing top tier boys are playing defense. That's okay. Not a problem. Okay. When they're playing defense, they're not necessarily the rushing defenseman. Usually we're just nice and responsible. We're a little bit more stay-at-home defensemen. That's a great skill set, and we need tons of those in women's hockey too. But then they come over to the women's game. Usually in Ontario, they're coming around. You do get some at like U11 and U13, but for sure they're coming by U15. For sure, for sure. And you would think, and they think they're just going to come and run the show. And some of them do. But often they come and they move the puck too quickly. They don't want to hang on to it, right? They're playing like a more passive style, a less aggressive style, because for whatever reason in the boys, that's where they ended up. So I'll tell a quick story. I had a player who played for me for many years, who was about 6'1", shot like could break glass with her shot, huge defenseman, had great wheels, could go end to end. When she played U22 Elite, could go end to end all day. No question. And who was going to stop her? Giant person. And I remember when she first started playing U22, she would stop at the red line and dump it in. Like she would be leading the rush. What are you doing? She's like, well, when I played boys, I was told I couldn't go over center. And I was like, she played AAA boys here, like for a good organization. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you can go over center because I wouldn't defend you if you paid me $1 million. I'd just turnstile and let you in the door. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. He goes, well, I used to be a center. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, I played center, AAA boys. And then I scored too many goals, so they made me a deep. I'm like, oh, and then they told you couldn't go over center. Oh, okay. So not saying that that happens with everybody, but I don't know that the world of boys hockey, men's hockey, their number one mission is not to have the girls succeed. Like, it's not that they don't want the girls to succeed,
Right.
but that's not their big thing of like, let's champion this girl so she gets to the top. That's not the number one priority. Not that it should be, but in girls hockey, we're championing all those girls to get to the tippy top all the time. And there is that issue that if it is a player who's quite good, is she going to get submarined just because of it's an ego thing? Or, I have met many girls who've come over to the girls' game from boys, and the dad will say, the mom will say, oh, it's because she wants to be around other girls. And then they'll pull me aside and say, actually, the coach said they don't want girls on the team anymore.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the girl doesn't know that, but that's the truth. And I'm not saying that's always the case. There were some of our best players in the world, played boys quite a long way through, and the captains of their, AAA teams and all of that. But they're the outliers. The majority of them, when you see it, who's the top levels, at least in North America, Europe is different. But in North America, many of them, have at least onboarded, like I said, U16s for you guys, U15s to us, and have played, girls the rest of the way through. I would say the goalies can last a little bit longer if they're great. Obviously, they don't have to body check. And, the other thing, of course, is if you want to play Team Ontario, Team Canada, any of that, you got to be playing girls hockey. So you can't make those teams if you're playing with the boys. So if that's an aspiration, or if you want to get a scholarship, they're not coming to some AA game in Richmond Hill, where I live, to watch a girl play hockey. They're going to go to the tournament with 180 teams and pick the girls from there. So, I would say that's the logical onboarding. But again, the social piece, I think trumps everything else. And once the girls get with the girls, they tend to level up their play because they feel more comfortable in the dressing room and on the ice with their teammates.
Seems to be a common
go
thread
ahead,
too. No, I just said it seems to be a common thread. I look for congruencies between episodes, and that if you are a young girl or you have a young girl that's joining a girls' team at some point, I think it was looked at as, oh, that's obvious, but it's looking like, no, that's actually the pathway, right? If you want to do this, post high school, you need to find a good girls organization that can help you develop in that side of the game. But go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I'm coaching a 10U team here, girls team. So I have girls that are 8, 9, and 10 years old, and they're just, starting to play travel hockey. But like you can get into skills and all that. But I think the biggest piece is when you're starting a girls team or girls program is to not overlook the social aspect of it. I feel like girls need to have fun to win, and I feel like boys need to win to have fun. And what I mean by that is like the girls with their locker room dance parties, the pool parties, a lot of the social stuff that they do, I think really factors into their team bond and their confidence. And without the girls, especially like having that social and confidence and like getting them to come out of their shell and be one team, is the little stuff like that that's not on ice related, is trying to get their confidence up. And the girls, I find they really don't want to disappoint you. They are very literal. And then like if you just give them, like when they're doing their drills, good job, don't worry if you fall, we're in practice, it's fine. I just feel like the more confidence you can give them by telling them they're doing good, and you'll just like it, especially earlier in the season, get them to become a team, just through the social stuff. Like, and if you are coaching a new team, get them to bond pretty quickly with your off ice stuff.
Yeah, that's the classic girls hockey thing, right? You go in the dressing room, you've never heard so much talking in your life, and then you go on
Dance
the ice.
parties, yeah.
You go on the ice and it's like crickets. Like, what happened to that dance party, guys? No one wants to call for the puck because nobody wants to be wrong, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to call for it at the wrong time. I mean, it's fascinating, and this goes back to the earlier question of why do you want females on the bench? Because we know that. We know that they don't talk on the bench, or on the ice, not because they don't know the answer, because they're worried about getting it wrong, or they don't want to be the one that stands out, right? Like, I haven't run a lot of boys hockey stuff, but I'm guessing when you pick a guy to demonstrate the drill, he's like, let's go, I'm the one. You do that with the girls and they are scared and don't want to be that girl.
Yeah, but they'll just do it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the guys, yeah, they'll be the worst player on the ice.
Like, it's great that you jumped.
I got this, but the girls will be the girls will be the best player on the ice, and will not want to show it, because not only do they not want to do it wrong, they don't want to be seen as the girl who, oh, she thinks she's so good. Oh, coach picked her. Like, these are just truisms. It's neither good nor bad. I've coached every age and every level of girls hockey. Like, I've seen it all. And that happens with the 7-year-olds, and it happens with the 17-year-olds. So that is something that, being a female in the female game really gives you that insight that it would be very, very hard to have, unless you were super in tune with your teenage daughters as a male and you really understood those mindsets. So it's definitely a secret power that we have as women in the game.
I think, the empathy that we have from coaching, like, Kim, you were that little girl, I was that little girl, like, we were 13, 14-year-old little girls. We know that social pressure that comes from other girls and being a woman. Like, I think we can coach with that sort of empathy and stuff because we've lived it. Whereas men, I think they just do the straight up game. Like, here's your drills, here's your power play, here's your stuff. They haven't experienced that emotion that we have and that social pressure that we have in girls hockey. So, yeah.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, just to get off the girls' hockey side too, is that that's happening more and more for the boys because of social media and because of the way boys now, young boys, I'm talking about 18-year-olds, well, 18-year-olds too, but like in the stages of development, the ability for any child to look at somebody else succeed and them not is now, like, I didn't know I wasn't any good. I thought I was pretty good in my town. I'm like, I'm the best player out here. But if I had social media back then, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Like, I'm not a good 12-year-old. Like, so I think it's both. It's like for men and women, and from the guys' perspective, men that are coaching hockey that played at a high level, you never went through that experience. So it's hard to have that empathy and that understanding that, oh my God, like, these kids, like, no, they're really not doing that well. Kind of like Kim, like your daughter, like, don't tell me I'm doing good, because I'm not. Like, I know I'm not doing well, so don't tell me I'm doing well. But I think I think it's melding into the boys' side too, as far as, and Lee talks about this a lot on the mental fitness side, is all of us as coaches have to understand that pressure is so much greater now.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's our fault, right? Because I'm showing my kids, oh, look what this person's doing. Look at that person in Toronto's doing. Look at that person in Australia's doing. We never had to do that. And now it's like everybody is everybody's at the same level or the same age, and they're at these other levels you never knew about. So I think there's a lot to be said for both, but no doubt about that having a female coach on a team is important. Not A for the locker room, B for the social piece, C for the peer piece. But I think just a lot of that ability to have another person in the room that really does understand and can talk to a group of young ladies in a way that, most males just can't.
I think some of the stuff too that parents don't see is what goes on behind a bench. Like I've had girls in a tight game, a 0-0 game, or it goes to overtime, and there's some girls that are like, no, coach, like they don't want to go because they don't want to be the one that screws up, right? And they'll just be like, oh, my leg hurts or something, right? And then you get lit up by parents like, why wasn't my kid on the ice? They don't know that the kid has like anxiety from that pressure. They don't want to be on the ice. So you put out other kids, and it's just stuff like that that goes on that parents don't even know about.
Well, and this is where communication comes in. I was going to say too, like, it's a broad thing that we talk about all the time, that 10 out of 10 issues always involve some form of communication, right? So, and this goes every different direction, right? Coaches talking to parents, parents talking to coaches, players to coaches, and back and forth. And I think that that's something that, Kim, you were talking before about girls on boys teams. A lot of times I find in those situations, there's not much dialogue between those families and the coach when there really needs to be, right? Of expectations, of understanding. I would never agree with a coach, I think, that says, "Oh, we don't want girls on their team," but you got to have that conversation, right? And it's a real disservice to everybody when you don't communicate. And I think that, Mike, to your point, we're in a time period now where the kids especially, but it's true for adults too, there's hyper awareness now. There's so much more awareness of everything going on around us because of the way society is, social media is, that it's creating new problems. But with that said, we're so used to texting now, especially kids, that we're not communicating. So you have hyper awareness without the communication. That is not a good recipe for success. So a lot of the times, especially when I'm working with the younger ages, and I mean 12 down, although this is still something I have to do with the older kids, we do communication drills where you're not going to get a pass if I don't hear you asking for the pass. Mm-hmm. Or Mike said this on a show once, it was really impactful. The goal of every drill should not be to conclude with a shot. Sometimes the drill is, no, communicate and figure out a way out of this problem. And in my opinion, this goes broader than just girls or boys hockey. That's a skill set we need to develop. And I think Sherry and Kim, you brought up a good point that it probably benefits different aspects of the game in different ways. But like, I'm just talking about, that's something I'm seeing on a broader sense across the board. I mean, and look, I can sum it up like this. In society, we have a hard time speaking with each other now. Like, that was not always true. You could disagree with someone not that long ago, and it would be a conversation. You'd buy a sandwich and you'd move on. That's not how it works anymore. So anyway, not trying to bring this to the societal level. I shouldn't have done that, but communication and then the hyper awareness. Those are kind of new things nowadays that we have to tackle as coaches and as a group.
Well, I think there's, Sherry made a good point about them hiding on the bench. I did this years ago because of that parent problem, like how come Sally's not out there? And I just did it as a social experiment. So I had, a U15 AA team, and I said, if you guys could only pick power play or penalty kill, which one would you pick? Right? And I had them do it blind because the girls aren't putting up their hands if they're looking at each other. No way. So they have their heads down and they put their hand up. Well, based on the paper with my 15 skaters, I only got 3 kids on the power play.
Right.
That's an interesting power play. Right. And so that's information that, it's just in my pocket. I suggest, if you're coaching girls hockey, it's just an interesting exercise to do.
That's a good point.
Because they don't necessarily want to be the one. Now, to me, I go, okay, well, maybe I could have fixed this if I had these kids when they were 7 and 8, but at 13, 14, they don't want to be the one. And so when, the papa is mad that they're not out there on the power play, say, well, I did this pretty official survey, and only 3 of them want to be on the power play. And so we're just doing the best we can. We got
it's your job, Kim, to make sure they all want to be on the power play.
Yeah, but okay, I'm guessing you guys would have to tell me, Mike, like, Lee, if you ask the boys, everyone's on the power play.
Everyone.
They all think they're on the power.
They
play.
all want to
Right.
be power.
So there's a
play.
difference, right?
Yeah.
And
Bill Snipe Sully.
That's
Yeah,
a good,
yeah,
that's a
it's-
good comeback to my sarcastic dad there. That was good.
yeah. It's all again, these are just things that
Yeah.
are important to know and to communicate. But I always say with the coaches, you've got to be empowered with this kind of information. So if the parents come at you, you can say, well, actually,
Yeah.
the girls aren't necessarily wanting to be the leader. And I think that's, like you said earlier, putting them in the positions to succeed, right? To be on the super team where you're the 12th best skater as a girl, I think is a really bad place to be.
Yeah.
I'd rather see that girl stay at her home center and be the one. Because there's a
Right.
lot of interesting thing that happens when you're in the top 3 or 4 players on your team. And I just think for women, in empowerment, I think that's a really powerful position to be in. And to get that experience, I think is huge for your whole
Right.
life, as opposed to go into the super team and you're just another person, right? And if you play college hockey, you'll become that other person one day, and you'll know what it means to not be the one anymore. But I do think it's very empowering for younger girls to stay in a situation where they can be the lead dog, and have to rise to the occasion. I think that's an important.
Well, I was going to say, Kim, our statistics show that you actually were that one player in college as a leading goal scorer. I'm just teasing you. No, yeah, she's nodding for those of you listening. Joking aside, you're a great teammate. You're a great leader and a great player. Another thing, I do a lot of work in team dynamics and team building and team mental fitness, as Mike said. One of the things I've noticed, and I was educated on this by a prominent female coach, is the difference between healthy competition and collaborative competition in men and women's sport, and this is not a black and white situation. It's not true of every athlete, but that a healthy competition in men's sports, in terms of putting one kid against the other kid over and over again, boys thrive in that environment, where we find women or young girls do not. You want a collaborative competition where it's, hey, you two are working together to solve this goal. We found that to be far more efficient of a training method than pitting them against each other. I wanted to throw that out there and just kind of put it up for discussion, because look, there are some scenarios you do have to go one-on-one. You do have to understand how to battle or hunt, as you said, Kim. But I found that from a training standpoint with young girls, creating a collaborative competition was very beneficial.
Well, they're there because they want to be part of a team. Like I always say, if you wanted to be an individual sport, like take up golf. This is not the place for you. And the girls really do thrive in that environment. They want that. They want to see their teammates succeed. They want to work together with them. I mean, I'm always just so impressed. Like I'll be on the bench and there'll be like a kid who's kind of the slowest one, or the one who's doing the wrong stuff. And, me and my super competitive head is like, eh. And I'm like, oh, I hope no one else is like thinking the same thing about Sally. And they're all like, yeah, Sally, you did great. Like they're just defeating me at every turn. I'm expecting the worst, but they want to do it as a group. And that's what I meant earlier, right? Is that you can have a lot of success on the ice by exploiting that want to do it all together. And that's a bit of the challenge of coaching, is how do you keep the creativity in, keep that problem solving in, without going too much to pass it here, do this, and giving them the answer. So it's having them work together to find the answer and having them fill the bucket, as opposed to us as coaches saying, here are all the answers, do it this way.
Great point.
Right? And that just takes longer. And it requires us to be patient, which is the P word. I am definitely not patient, but I am trying to learn patience, to say, I need you to make all these mistakes. I need you guys to figure this out on your own, so that we can have that conversation. Hey, did you see how that worked? What did you do there? Why did we do it this way? And make them a part of the process. And I find the girls just thrive with that kind of questioning environment, versus they will do it the way you fill the cup and tell them to do it. But then as they move up in different levels, or they want that college scholarship, or they want to play in the PW or on the Olympic team, those players are creative. They'll stand in the right place in D-zone coverage. No problem. That takes them about 3 minutes to figure out, right? But how the heck do you stop Natalie Spooner, or how the hell do you get around Renata Fast? There's no formula for that, guys. right? That's creativity. And so that's, I think, a little bit of that problem solving is how are we going to solve it without giving them the answer,
Right.
but being patient enough as coaches and parents to say, you're going to screw this up a lot of times till you find the answer for that one moment on the ice that will never happen again. And then you're going to need a different answer.
Right.
But I agree with you. I just think they're not lone wolves out there. And often the players that are a little bit more of that mindset, they don't quite last in the girls' environment. Even if they're phenomenal players, there's sort of this need to come together as a group. And if you're, a little bit too much individually focused, that's really hard in the girls' game. Those players, even though they're phenomenal, they just stick out like a sore thumb. I don't know, Sherry might have a different experience of that, but I think that's those are the challenging ones when they don't quite buy into the whole team concept.
I'll say this, that old line from The Hangover, the one man wolf pack, that's a pretty good way to describe boys hockey. Whereas I I think girls hockey is more of just a wolf pack in general, right? But Kim, you're saying, and I just want to reiterate the importance of what you said about coaching creativity. This is across the board. It's not just hockey. We got to teach our kids to think, period. Like those critical thinking skills. And I think a lot of, I'll just say adults, like you want to give them the answer because you care about them. You want them to know. But the truth is you have to let them discover the answer a lot of the times. Again, this is not limited to hockey, right? You got to teach them to think. And as Kim said, that coaching the creativity, right? Creativity is a huge part of the game. It's a huge separator in the game amongst the great players and the players who just go do what they're told. We are going here. This has been a great episode so far. I think this is a great place to end unless anybody has any other questions they want to ask, because Kim, you've just provided so much insight. I was saying while I was sitting here in my own head, like all the hockey dads are just nodding their head right now with all the information you're dropping. And I am definitely going to tell my daughter to hunt for the puck because she is very much a stay-at-home, protect the net defenseman and does not really jump. And we've been trying to figure out a way as coaches to kind of help her understand that. I think you dropped that, right? Is go hunting for the puck. So I'm going to give a try and we'll report back in a part 2 episode with you. But does anybody else have any other questions before I close this out?
No, this is great. Thank you for being here, Kim.
No, we didn't even get the team. We didn't even get the team Iceland. So I guess we have to have her back.
Well, we're gonna have to do
Part 2.
part 2, part 3. I've been traveling all over the world coaching Team Iceland. Super fun. So yeah, I'm happy to come and talk. As you guys can tell, I love it, and I appreciate all the insights and for putting up with a Torontonian for an hour talking hockey. It's a lot.
Awesome. This is like the end of a Marvel film. It's like Coach Kim will return. We'll do one of those like that. Whenever you'll have me, I'm happy to chat. So you guys just let me know. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And like I said, I love to share. And so if people want to reach out, email, whether you're coaching boys or girls anywhere in the world, this is what I love to do. So I'm happy to help any way I can. Well, look, your pride and passion for the game are clearly pouring through in this episode. We love guests that love to talk. It makes the podcast much easier. I'm not going to lie to you. So whether you're listening to this or watching this, Kim, you have been a fantastic guest, and we've shed a lot of light on a lot of topics today. The goal of these episodes, all of our episodes across the board, are to learn and to educate and have a great conversation, because we think that from great conversations is where the education comes, and that's what we need to do more as a hockey society. So as Sherry and Mike said, thank you so much for being here today. My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a great hockey season. Just around the corner. Yeah, it's only 12 more months to go, as I like to say. So that's going to do it for this edition of Our Girls Play Hockey. Remember, you can listen to all of the Our Girls Play Hockey, or Our Kids Play Hockey, or The Ride to the Rink, or Our Kids Play Goalie on the Our Kids Play Hockey Network at ourkidsplayhockey.com. Did I say Our Kids Play Hockey enough in that outro? I think I did. I want to thank all of you for listening today. Again, if you have any questions, you can email us, team@, you guessed it, ourkidsplayhockey.com. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much. And as we always say here, skate on. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.